So now let's look at the school system. One of the major issues parents have is that boys tend to be disengaged, and you will start seeing it around age 12 to somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. It's like they don't want to go to school anymore. Um, they don't see why they need to go to school. And one of the things that's happening is that a lot of boys in this age group experience what is called a lack of purpose. Boys need to have a purpose for something. And the education system is set up in a way that, first of all, it doesn't consider their strengths as it relates to brain development. It doesn't consider that they are literally a year and a half to 2 years behind girls in their brain development. So the kind of expectations that you have of them, it's kind of unfair when you're comparing them with girls. So boys need to have a purpose for being at school. There was a study that I read, or not necessarily a study, but a school that had boys who were given a lot of trouble. They were disengaged, constantly in detention. And one of the teachers decided that they will ask this troubled group to help to monitor the school, to help them to make sure students are going to class on time, the hallway is cleared, and all of that. Those boys' life transformed. One parent commented that she's surprised that her son is actually motivated to go into school instead of skipping school. He gets up on time, he goes and do his thing, and they look forward to school. Why? Because during that process that the teacher transformed them, he gave them a sense of purpose. So one of the main reasons boys are clicking out is that they do not have a sense of purpose regarding the school system. Another thing too is the perception of not being liked. How many of us as parents have heard boys say, "Oh, I don't want to go to school. My teacher doesn't like me." And the reason you will find some boys saying that, again, because cognitively and so on, the brain development wise, they lag behind girls sometimes. And what sometimes teachers do is that they might put all the fast-paced or quote unquote bright students in one group and the ones who are struggling in another group, right? And boys can pick that up and they can interpret that as the teacher not liking them, as the teacher thinking of them as less than. And if a boy experiences that, he is not going to want to engage at all. All right? The other challenge that we have is the rigid academic settings in kindergarten. Now, in kindergarten years, children learn way better through play instead of sitting down and going through academic work, such as reading, doing math, and all of that. Especially if you look at schools in the US now, where everything is more test oriented, that's where you see the challenges. And this rigidity, again, because boys are lagging behind, they tend to be seen as the more difficult one. They tend to be seen as the one that fidget a lot, can't focus, can't concentrate, and that kind of perception can actually set them up to fail later on in life. So if you look at it, for example, readiness to read, a girl by the age of 5 is ready. Most girls are in this process of being ready to read, right? And this doesn't really activate in most boys until about age 7. So grade 5, your child is in kindergarten. You have to be doing reading, math, and so on. Who is likely to be seen as more motivated, more disciplined, more engaged? It will be the girls. But why is that? It's because their brain at around age 5 is more likely to be ready for that kind of activity, while boys' brain are not. So the challenge now or what a lot of people are doing, and if you're on this call and you're in a country where there's a rigid academic system for kindergarten and you see that your son is struggling and you see that he's unable to settle and just be focused, consider holding him back a year. So if you have junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten, maybe keep him back in junior kindergarten for a second year, or if he hasn't started school yet, to delay by a year. When you delay by a year, you give your son's brain enough chance to develop, to thrive and function in this rigid academic system. If you don't, his brain is going to be too immature, and he's going to be coming in a lot of clashes with teachers. And you can see from those experiences as early as kindergarten years that the boys will definitely tune out of the whole experience regarding education. So another thing to realize too is that as it relates to the issue of boys versus girls, interesting thing is that girls are more motivated to want to please teachers. So they're more likely to do their homework because they want to please their teachers. And boys, on the other hand, do the homework because it's of interest to them. So we have to be careful of that. And if they do their homework in a way to please teachers, it can reduce their status in their boy group. And their status in the boy group is very important to them. So sometimes if you have both a boy and a girl and they may be close in age or they might be twins, you might be thinking, why is it my daughter is able to just sit down and do her work and I struggle so much with my son? Remember, the brain development delay is one thing, but also the motivation behind it. Girls want to please their teachers. Boys don't care about pleasing their teachers. They care about whether or not this topic is of interest to them. And if you go back, they are more into spatial activities, perception, and all of that. And girls are more in tune to analytical, intuitive activities. When you think back on education, what is more prevalent? The kind of education that would be of interest to girls, not necessarily those activities that include a lot of spatial activities or perceptive activities for boys. So even that, their strength is not being tapped into. And they don't want to just be impressing teachers because it's against the boy code. So be careful of that. The next thing is curriculum development, that is developmentally appropriate for boys. I just mentioned that. You have to integrate part of their strengths and not just have everything focused on the intuitive. Now, there's a big thing that I want to mention, and this is the difference between experiential and abstract learning. Okay? So the experiential learning is doing. You learn by doing. You learn by translating your knowledge into action. And the abstract is like you're sitting there studying a table or a diagram and that kind of thing. Boys function better with experiential learning. Girls can do well with both. They can do experiential learning and abstract learning. But the boys, the experiential learning is way more important to them. And if we think of our current education system, how many of our boys have the opportunity to to go through experiential learning? Not a lot. What they go through is, especially at a young age, intensive reading drills. And this is very disengaging for boys, right? Especially if they're very young. And girls are fine with that. Again, the language part of the brain develops faster for girls.